Hello again and welcome back to our course on Project 2019. In this section we're going to look at keyboard shortcuts and key tips. Now if you don't use keyboard shortcuts and you're not interested in finding out how to use them, then you certainly can skip this section. I do know that many people like to use keyboard shortcuts, myself included. They can be particularly useful if you have repetitive jobs to do and you don't like moving the mouse around all day. You'd much rather just go straight to what you need using the keyboard. And for some people, the use of the keyboard is a necessity either because of an injury or some kind of impairment, and the use of the keyboard is much more preferable to trying to use a mouse or some other approach. In Project 2019, keyboard shortcuts are very well supported, and in this section, I'm going to take you through the main options for using them. Now, of course, the main problem with keyboard shortcuts for most people is knowing what they are. And I must confess that I probably only use about 10 or so because I struggle to remember any of the others aside from those core 10 that I use frequently. So for example, the ones that I use quite a lot would be things like cut, copy, paste, save, print, those kinds of keyboard shortcuts. If I go to a tab on the ribbon, so let's go to the Task tab. If you wanted to know the keyboard shortcut for cut and you couldn't remember, if you hover over the cut button, it tells you that it's cut and it gives you the keyboard shortcut in brackets afterwards, Ctrl+X. Similarly, for copy, you can see there that the keyboard shortcut shown in brackets is Ctrl+C. Format Painter, now unfortunately for Format Painter there isn't one. And that's the problem with many of the commands, that there isn't an equivalent keyboard shortcut. So if you know a keyboard shortcut already, that's fine, and it's supported in Project. If not, if you hover over the ribbon and that particular command you're interested in, you'll soon find out whether there's a keyboard shortcut for it or not. So the next option, is there a list of keyboard shortcuts? Well, yes, there is. If I press the keyboard shortcut F1 to bring up online help, and I use the search facility to search for keyboard shortcuts, you'll see I get a link there for keyboard shortcuts in Project. So let's click it. And there's some information at the top, but if we scroll down, we get to the different keyboard shortcuts that we can use within Project. Now, of course, you could print this out if you wanted to, and I know some people print this out and stick it on their wall so it's easy for them to reference quickly. The keyboard shortcuts are basically arranged into categories. So you can see here we've got display and use windows. Then if we scroll down, we have move around in text or cells, move around and work in tables, so on and so forth. So it makes it a bit easier for you to find what you're looking for. So you have all of the standard shortcuts, but then you also have a group that relates specifically to Microsoft Project shortcuts. So you've got keyboard shortcuts for using a network diagram, navigating views and windows and so on. So there's a list at the bottom there. And if you're pretty good at remembering those things, or as I say, if you want to stick that on the wall, that's a very good source for finding keyboard shortcuts. So that's a couple of ways of finding out what keyboard shortcuts are. There is another way, and that's the use of key tips, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you now. I've got the task name Task 1 selected in that single task in my current schedule. And I want to underline the name, but I can't remember the keyboard shortcut to do the underlining. So let me demonstrate key tips. First of all, if I just tap the Alt key, it brings up some 1 and 2 character codes for accessing the commands on the quick access toolbar and the tabs on the ribbon. Now, if I can't remember which ribbon tab it is, I could step through these one at a time. But I do know that what I want is on the Task tab. So if I press the H key, that's the access key for the Task tab. And now you'll see that the commands on the Task tab on the ribbon are each presented to me with their various other letter or number codes. Now, number 3 would give me access to the underline command, but let me be just a little bit more flexible than that. I want to bring up the dialog, which gives me all of those formatting, font formatting commands. So I'm going to do F and N. So F and then N. That brings up the font dialog. Now to go through the commands on the font dialog, I successively press the Tab key until I get to the one that says underline. When underline is selected, I press the spacebar to enable underline. And if you look at the top right-hand corner of the dialog, you'll see that the OK button is selected. So if I press the Enter key, that will be underlined. Now you can bring up those key tips at any time by pressing the Alt key, and you can switch them off again by pressing the Alt key again. That's the end of this section. I will see you in the next one.